Hi everyone, happy Friday. I'm back, and this week I'm going to discuss a few questions that have come in from different people around the world. Remember, please send us your questions, queries, requests. I want to try and keep this a dialogue. I know it's me talking all the time, but I really do feel I'm reaching out to you all, talking with you. It's a conversation, and I'm trying to keep them a little more condensed. Last week we kept it to about 13-14 minutes, and I'll try to do the same today. So these are some questions from Juliana in Germany, who works closely with Natasha. So the first was regarding the gluteal kneeling series. The gluteal kneeling series, a great series for the glutes. Juliana, that whole series is done in a neutral spine position, neutral pelvis, neutral spine position. For some reason you thought it may be in a posterior tilt to the pelvis. No, I looked in the pictures. The pelvis is clearly in neutral, as is the spine, and it should stay that way throughout the series. Really what we're trying to achieve there is hip disassociation while the pelvis and the spine remains neutral, or as close to neutral as possible. Same as the knee stretch, flat back, which is in fact in a neutral spine, neutral pelvic position. In fact, that can be a good preparation for teaching people hip disassociation in the knee stretch, a very difficult exercise for people to grasp. You also pointed out Joseph Pilates' birthday, that is 1880. In the, you had written in your email 1980, I assume that was a mistake, 1880. That it's in the study guide written as 1880, where in fact it should be 1883. We will check that, and if of course his date of birth or year of birth is 1883, of course that must and will be changed. One of the other questions you had was the saw, that the muscle focus is the hamstrings, and one of the objectives is hamstring stretch. That is correct. Where one of the muscle focuses is the hamstrings, and we focus on the hamstring and stretch it. So when when we specify a muscle focus, it doesn't necessarily mean that we're referring to strength of that muscle. It simply refers to the fact that we're focusing our attention on that muscle. In this case, to stretch that muscle. You point out that that's the only hamstring stretch exercise in the mat work. In fact, there are a couple of others. There aren't many, so the way we do the saw in BASI, contrary to some other schools, we do try and specify the fact that it is for hamstring stretch, and that's why we keep the extensors of the back working as we go forward into hip flexion, and take the back as flat as possible to accentuate the hamstring stretch, whereas some schools actually round the back as they go forward. Obviously that will not maximize your hamstring stretch. A couple of other exercises where we do say the objective is to stretch the hamstrings is the spine stretch is another one, and the hamstring pull one. We specify that an objective can be to stretch, dynamically stretch the hamstrings. So I hope that answers all your questions, Juliana. Thank you for those questions and the one comment about Joseph Pilates' year of birth. Ed had a few questions about the rowing. Thank you, Ed, one of my favorite series. The The first question Ed had was about rowing back one. I was going to go into the studio to demonstrate this, but the studio is packed right now, so I'm just going to demonstrate it here. Ed, you asked, once we're in this position, we often add some shoulder abduction before coming forward. So we go out into what we call a T position. It's not a true T position. The arm will be at a slight angle, and then we sometimes add this pull, the shoulder abduction. The carriage will move a little, so we're in more of a true T position before coming forward. It's a nice nuance. It's a little additional challenge. In the comprehensive training, Ed, and to all your faculty, don't do that. Meaning, just simply go out to this line here. So you're in that position there. Don't add that little pull, just to there, and from there, you come forward. One of the good things about doing it like that, one is very simple. Where the arms land up, that's where you hold it. The second very good thing about doing it like that and not adding that little bit of shoulder abduction is that you can keep the carriage absolutely still as you transition from this position to the body being forward and the arms back. There will be no movement in the carriage, and that's a really good cue to give to people, to keep the carriage still as you transition from that supine position to the body reaching forward and the arms back. There will be no movement in the carriage. So thanks for that, Ed. Thanks for the clarification, because sometimes we teach it with, sometimes without. Gets confusing. Keep it simple. We'll add that little nuance to the rowing series in one of our more advanced programs, in the Legacy program. I don't believe we do it in the Mentor, but we'll add it to one of the others. Ed, one of the other questions, thank you for this one, in rowing back two. As you know, we come to this 90-degree angle. We roll all the way down, and that same angle simply goes down. When we're coming up, we get that moment of flexion. We start extending the back. Ed, you're absolutely correct in saying there will be a moment where the trunk is about at a 45-degree angle, and you had mentioned the arms vertical. No, the arms will not be vertical. The arms will be at about a 45-degree angle going the other way. And therefore, you've got a 90-degree angle in the shoulder joint. So you're in this position. Trunk at about 45 degrees in one direction, arms about 45 degrees at the other direction, and then bring the trunk to vertical. Often what happens, Ed, is people get to this angle, but they're trying to reach too high with the arms and the shoulders elevate. So don't try and get to vertical with the arms. In fact, the arms will be in front of the body. I can't say it's exactly 45 degrees, but that is a good indication, with the trunk 45 that way, arms 45 that way, and therefore between the two lines you've got this 90-degree angle. I hope that clarified that. Now, in the Mentor program, Ed, there's a different one. And that is when you come up. Where are we? We're here. We're coming up, and you go into extension. There, the arms will be absolutely vertical, but there the back is in a hyper-extended position, and which accommodates for this vertical arm position, and then you bring the whole structure forward. Ed, you asked about the frog position, whether it is hip dependent, meaning it's dependent on the person, or whether we should set it at a certain angle, and that some people are not getting enough external rotation. In my experience, actually, people go into too much external rotation, particularly dancers, people that are very flexible, they're used to working in a turned out position. They go into too much external rotation, and I'm often bringing them back. A good indication is the V that we use in the footwork. So as you know, we go from parallel toes to V position toes. If you take that same V into the frog, that's a good indication. It's about, the knees will be about the width of the shoulders, the frame of the shoulders, or slightly beyond. But what you want to avoid is that flopping out of the knees or going too far into hip external rotation. This is not a first position in dance. It's what we call, as you know, a Pilates V, which is about 30 degrees total of hip external rotation, 30 degrees between of each hip, about 30 degrees. Where was the next? Hip supine series. So Ed, you asked why we do when we do the extended frog, we do the circles down, circles up prior to the extended frog, whereas in the base foundation series, fundamental series, we start with the frog. The reason being, Ed, and then we go in the fundamental series, we go frog, down circles, up circles, and then openings. The openings come last because they are the most demanding and the most intense on the hip adductors. The extended frog contains within it the openings, and they're intense, they're hard. So we simply warm up the hip joint, warm up the hip adductors with the down circles, up circles, and then we bring in the extended frog. So, you know, it's just a way of warming up before that very intense exercise, the extended frog, which contains within it the openings. So when we're doing the fundamental, it's frog, down circles, up circles, openings. When we do the more intermediate series, or the intermediate series, down circles, up circles, extended frog reverse. So Deborah, hope that's all clear, Ed. Deborah made some comments, and that is the 100 prep. We talk about pelvic lumbar stabilization or pelvic spinal stabilization. Deborah made a very good point in that we're not actually keeping the spine stable. The pelvis is stable, but the spine is moving up and down, moving into flexion and back into neutral, into flexion, back into neutral. Deborah, thank you very much for that comment. Yes, we'll edit that. It should be pelvic stabilization, not pelvic lumbar or pelvic spinal stabilization. However, in the 100, pelvic lumbar stabilization would be correct, because there we're holding it absolutely stable. The position is stable, the trunk is stable, the spine is stable, the pelvis is stable as we go through this essentially isometric exercise with the arms being dynamic. I believe that was all the questions. So please continue sending your questions in. I really enjoy them. Again, just this, be careful not to go into too much external rotation. This moderate V position is a very good V. One of the questions that has come up as we're editing these movement analysis workbooks and the workbooks for the legacy program, the names. We struggle with the names of exercises, and we're trying to follow some grammatical logic. So years ago we decided the noun would come first and then the adjective. Why that is important is for indexing purposes. So when we're doing indexing, if the adjective comes first, it messes up all the indexing, because you don't really see the name of the exercise or what exercise it is until you actually read further. If the noun comes first, it's easier. For instance, spine twist, supine. Spine twist, sitting. If we had supine, spine twist, then you're getting all these exercises that say supine or sitting or whatever it may be. Prone. Rather than back extension, prone, or push through, prone, you're getting the noun first, and that for indexing purposes is easier. And just to draw your attention, immediately say, we're talking about the spine twist, and then which spine twist it is. It brings your attention to it. So, circles. We should say circles down, circles up, rather than down circles, up circles. Otherwise, we're going to have in the index down, 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 all the downs, rather than circles, circles, circles. The circle is the noun, and then what circle is it? Down circles on the whatever, F2 chair, on the standing series, on the arms kneeling, we immediately see what exercise it is. Now, for the lunges, we just had to deal with this recently. It sounds fine to say kneeling lunge, standing lunge, but I'm sorry, I fell into my own trap. Lunge kneeling, lunge standing, those sound fine. Lunge reverse sounds fine, but lunge full sounds strange, because we've always called it the full lunge. So we've changed that to lunge forward. So they now will be lunge standing, lunge kneeling, lunge forward, lunge reverse, lunge forward with balance and extensions, which we learn in the mentor program. So that sounds better than lunge full. You don't need to tell the students that yet. I'm just telling you that that's what we're doing now in the editing, and we're trying as far as possible to follow this guideline of the noun first, followed by the adjective. Again, with the lunges, forgive my mistake, years and years of saying it, it will be lunge standing, lunge kneeling, lunge forward, lunge reverse, lunge forward with balance, lunge forward with balance and extensions, and so on and so forth. I want to finish off and conclude by congratulating Sam on her book. Her book is published, it's out there, you can buy it on Amazon or any other outlet. We'll have them here on the BASI site. Sam, congratulations, so proud of what you've achieved, amazing book. So from our BASI family, we all congratulate you, Sam. Thank you all, have a great weekend.